Study them, okay? So you're ready for Wednesday, okay? Because it's not enough to get the cards. What we're finding when people come into student hours is that the information is on the cards, but it's not necessarily, they can't find the information. And now I can't find the cards. So, to help you out, I want to pass out cards. These are from former students, okay? And I want you to see how they organize things, how they use color, okay? All right? And how they kind of bulleted their information so they can find things faster, okay? So I'll start a couple here. Well, I'll start one here, okay? Start one here, okay? And look at the format, not necessarily the well, you can look a little bit at the content, but the format is where things are at, so you can find things, because we've got, this is week 10, so we have 11, 12, 13, 14, 5 more weeks of instruction and then the final, and you gotta know all the disease cards, right? So, yeah, coming up quick. Okay. All right, we showed this last time. What is the strongest rays on here? Gamma, right. And these are the weaker ones, okay, good. And we talked about the 2 types of radiation that can cause biological damage. What is the 2 types of radiation? Ionizing and non-ionizing, right. Okay, so let's talk about non-ionizing radiation. This does not penetrate well. It sterilizes the surfaces, okay, and it's UV within 260, and it makes thymine dimers that we've talked about before, okay? And then when you go through replication, you get breakage when the machinery hits that thymine dimer, okay? What do they use this for? They use this a lot during COVID. In aircraft, they'd run these UV robots up and down all night to sterilize the planes. Okay, did it get deep into the seats? No way, but at least it got the surfaces, okay? And you can see the, here's the non-ionized side and the non-radiation and the radiation side. It cleans it up. So when do we want to use this stuff? Well, we're seeing a lot of new water plants that are coming online that are using UV to help clean up the water, okay? And it might be more effective. The only trouble is penetrating power, and that these bulbs that are at 260 nanometers are expensive, okay? All right, let's talk about ionizing radiation. This has extremely high penetrating power, and it breaks DNA strands, okay? And these are X-ray, gamma rays, cathode rays, okay? And we use this to sterilize medical supplies and food products. And we can use it to sterilize liquids, all right? We can use it to sterilize liquids. I'm a big proponent of using ionizing radiation to kill things, because once you could set up a cesium source like cesium-137, run your mail through it, run chicken through it, and you don't even have to refrigerate chicken once that you've sterilized it with ionizing radiation. Why do you think we don't use it? People are scared of it. People are scared of it. And I think I told you about the dirty bomb that went off in Brazil, and all the medical staff leaves the hospital because they don't know how to deal with radiation, right? Okay. Did anybody see the Chernobyl? It's been, 30 some odd years now since Chernobyl. Did anybody see that HBO special on Chernobyl? Yeah, if you want to freak out, take a look at that, okay? You see what can happen with ionizing radiation. I mean, that was pretty intense. And, the liquidators that went in to kill the, to try and stop the fire, a lot of them are dead. I mean, they can only be in for a minute, and then they would get their lifetime dose of radiation, okay? So, I mean, it's nothing to be trivialized, to trivialize as far as ionizing radiation. But as a healthcare worker, a medical healthcare worker, you should know how to deal with it, okay? I had Riverside EMS. I got exposed when I was a graduate student. I had been up for 48 hours, and I made a mistake, okay? I was shearing some radioactive DNA that had both P32 and S35, and you remember that from our experiment. The experiments, who used P32 and S35? Hershey and Chase, right? Okay, so I'm trying to chase this DNA molecule, and I'd been up for 48 hours doing parts of the experiment, and I had to shear the DNA through a needle. And I got all my samples done, and I put them in the incubator to sit and, rest for a little while. And as I was cleaning up is when it happened. And one of those syringes, I was double gloved, went right through my thumb and out the other side. Okay, and I had a Geiger counter in front of me. I had my chirper on, and felt it, did it. That syringe was hotter than hell. It was clicking like crazy. Then I put it, went up to my thumb, and it was hot too. It was really hot. So what do you do in that case? Okay, well, I swore. I mean, big surprise. But I went to the sink and I made it bleed as much as I could. I bled into the radioactive waste as much as I could, tried to get it out. It's 3 in the morning. I had to call the health service, environmental health and services on the UCR campus to say, hey, I've had this exposure. I tried calling my advisor. He had his phone off. So they said, okay, we'll send an ambulance for you. Okay, all right. So here everybody comes up to the 5th floor, these very handsome young men, and I was 25 at the time. I didn't mind at all. Okay. And they were like giving my vitals, and they're like, well, you seem pretty stable, but we have to transport you. I said, no, you don't. I said, I can transport myself. There's nothing that's gonna happen in between here and the hospital. But the EMTs didn't know what to do. So I get to Riverside Community Hospital across the street, and they fast-track me. My vitals are stable. I'm fine. I'm not throwing up. I'm not sick. If somebody has radiation sickness, they start vomiting, they get disoriented, and I knew the dose I got. I got a pretty good dose, but it wasn't going to be lethal. Okay? So they take me back in the triage and hook me up to the EKG and start fluids and, large, like I'm gonna crash or something. And they said, well, we haven't had a case like this before. I'm like, really surprised. Okay, they haven't had a case. So the ER doctor, I'll never forget this, said, would you mind putting a glove on the hand that you got injured? That was my question, why? He's like, well, we'd feel a little safer with it. Okay. Okay, 3 types of radiation: alpha, beta, gamma. Okay? All right, your book isn't going to go into this, but you're in healthcare. If we ever have a nuclear event, you better know what you're doing, okay? All right, alpha is like polonium. You remember those Russian spies that were killed with polonium? They had as much, oh, I don't even have it. Look at the tip of your pencil. The tip of your pencil had polonium on it. It's an alpha emitter. It's very, very dense. He put it in the tea of the spy. He died of radiation poisoning about 3 weeks later. You do not want to die of radiation poisoning. It's horrible. Okay, gamma is like the X-rays, right? Very high energy, going to go right through. Okay, if we have a nuclear event in Los Angeles, what we're going to have first after the explosion is gamma come. Okay, gamma goes through. The only thing you have to be concerned about is the dust. The particles can adhere to dust. So whenever you think about a radiation exposure, you think about time and distance. All right, if we had something that went off in Los Angeles, I'd say just hole up in your house for a while. Make sure your house doesn't have any leaks. Don't turn on your AC, don't turn on your heat, don't turn on anything. Seal up your windows and that, and stay there for about 48 hours. That will get rid of about 90% of it, okay? If you have a patient that comes in and they're vomiting and their vitals are crazy, and they're disoriented in that, you have to be able to decide, is it like psychological trauma, or is it radiation sickness? If it's radiation sickness, they're not going to survive if they're that sick. They just won't survive. They might survive for 3 weeks, but there's no recovery. Who do you get? People in the middle. People that got some, getting a little sick, not too sick, you know, whatever. Those are the ones that are going to survive. So what dose did I have? I had this dose right here, beta. Okay, the half-life on this is about 60 days. This one is about 14 to 30 days. So whatever I had, my body was just going to take up that phosphorus and that sulfur and put it wherever it's going to do in different proteins, but most of it will be gone in 6 months. Okay, so beta, you can shield with lead. It was no big deal, but is a glove going to do anything? No. So what did they do? They had me pee in a cup and they sent it to Oak Ridge National Lab for analysis and said, well, we're going to update your tetanus shot. You can go home now. Thank you very much. But yeah, I don't know why in the nursing program used to train in radioactive things. But yeah, so just be smart about it to see how it works. Now, with all that said, I still am a huge proponent of using radiation to help preserve our food, okay? To help preserve the food. Because, all right, here's some raspberries, 5 days, not treated with radiation. And here's the raspberries that were treated with radiation. Do you notice a difference? One grew hair, one did not. Okay, what is growing here? A fungus, yeah. Okay, what did you do? Well, they ran these through an irradiator, probably a gamma radiator. Okay, it killed everything off, and then it has a greater shelf life. Okay, so only the microbes that come in after the radiation are going to be a threat. So that's what I'm saying. You know, if the country wasn't that nervous about radiation, thank you, we could definitely use it to help preserve food. Okay, let's talk about microwaves. Okay, microwaves are great. They heat up stuff. They're electromagnetic waves. They converted. So what ends up happening? A microwave is going to take water. Okay, that's what it does, and heat the water up. And as it heats the water up, it is going to warm your food up. Okay? Is it going to kill endospores? No, endospores don't have a lot of water in it. What else should you not put in the microwave in terms of food if you're trying to kill microbes? It doesn't kill endospores, but what else doesn't it kill? Cysts. So, do you ever put bacon in a microwave? Never. Never ever. Why? Because in bacon, you don't have uniform water in the meat, right? And the fat. And so you can't guarantee that you're going to get cysts, okay? And you're going to be able to kill them because cysts usually don't have a high water content. But also you don't get uniform heating. That's the problem with microwaves, is you don't get uniform heating. And so the cysts just, can survive. Okay. Put some more tables on so you can have it as easy references. Let's start talking about the chemicals. Okay? All right, we've got 10 different groups of chemicals that we're going to look at for this. We start out with the halogens, and then we look at the phenolics, and then chlorhexidine, alcohols, hydrogen peroxide, which are oxidizing agents, detergents and soaps and quats. These are the things that are going to make bubbles. Okay, heavy metals, aldehydes, gases and aerosols, and preservatives and pH. Okay, so that's where we're going here. All right, so let's look at some of the chemical agents that we have, okay? Some of these are really effective at low concentration. We look at things that don't need to be at high concentration in order to be effective, because oftentimes then we run into toxicity of the host. Okay, solubility is a broad spectrum. Does it penetrate, and is it affordable? Okay, so we've got 3 classifications for chemical decontamination. We've got high-level germicides that can be sterilants, intermediate level that kill fungal spores but not the endospores, and then we have low level that can get only the bacteria that are dividing, only the fungi that are dividing, and maybe some viruses. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. If you're at a hospital, oftentimes you use these high-level germicides, but at home we tend to use more of the low-level stuff. Okay. All right, let's look at these pictures of things that can kill things. All right, I like this one, phenol. That's my favorite. Isn't it pretty? It's just pretty, and it's that. But what do you notice? A lot of these have some kind of rings. You see chloride on there. Okay, isopropyl alcohol and ethyl alcohol. Their targets are more membrane, so they're going to have a little different structure. I don't want you to memorize these, but at least kind of get an idea from their chemistry what is more, just a little familiarity with them. Let's talk about the halogens. Okay, you have these at home, right? I hope you do. I hope you have some hypochlorite, which is chlorine bleach. Okay, and it denatures proteins. It disrupts the disulfide bonds in the proteins. Okay, and it can be biocidal. Okay, and it can be inactivated by organic matter, and it's cyst resistance. So we talked last time about organic matter. If you got a lot of carbons, it's going to take a lot more higher concentration and higher volume to kill, because the organic matter sucks up a lot of these chemicals. Okay, iodine, which is I2, this is the iodophores like betadine, and it denatures proteins as well. It can be microbial-cidal, okay? But we also know this is, at some concentrations, it's actually can be used on the skin. And what do we call it when it is able to clean the skin? Antisepsis, good, okay. So these are the 2 halogens. And we get them from, the halogens are on that far column 7 on the periodic table. That's where you're going to find chlorine and iodine. Okay. All right, here's the phenolics. I love the phenolics. They're toxic as crazy. Okay. They damage membranes and proteins. They're bactericidal, fungicidal, virucidal, but not sporicidal. Okay. They can, if you have a lot of organic matter, doesn't matter, because this can be active in organic matter. Okay. It's stable and persistent. Probably the most famous group of phenolics is Lysol. Okay, and then there's triclosan. Have you heard of triclosan? Okay, tried to keep it out of a lot of soaps in that triclosan, but this is a industrial phenolic. These are at home. Okay, and if you have like a antimicrobial soap, it's often due to a phenolic. Okay, so triclosan is actually been banned starting in September of 2017. Okay, if we look back to the phenolic, remember it was kind of a ring, wasn't it? It was a ring thing here. Okay, and it had some things up here. Okay, but this is the phenol ring. Okay. And what is it? Do you think that this is hydrophobic or hydrophilic? Hydrophobic. It's very hydrophobic. So where is it going to hang out in humans? If it's hydrophobic, it's going to hang out in membranes. Where else? Adipose tissue, fat tissue. Okay. it's persistent in the environment. And this is what led to it being outlawed in 2017, is because they were starting to detect it in breast milk. Breast milk is high fat, right? It's really high fat. So if you could detect it in breast milk and it's coming from the things you're washing your hands with, you don't really want to, have it there, because it is toxic. It's toxic, and it's going to be persistent. And you've probably heard of this term in boy, what was that? Oh, wow, bless you. That was so cute. Okay, you've heard this term biomagnification in Bio 1, okay, where you have things that are lipophilic and persistent in the environment can get in very, very high concentrations by the time it reaches the top of the food chain, okay? So they used to put it in all sorts of, antibacterial soaps and toothpaste. If you go outside the U.S., you still can find it. If you go to Mexico, you'll find triclosan. Okay. One of the other reasons that they decided to eliminate triclosan is because there was bacterial resistance to it. Okay. So now we've got two very good reasons why not to put it into commercial products, is because, hey, it could biomagnify, it's showing up in the fat, okay? It's an endocrine disruptor. Do you know what an endocrine disruptor is? Have you heard of an endocrine disruptor? Okay, endocrine disruptors are chemicals that look like hormones, like estrogen or testosterone. And so when the body sees these chemicals, they have the same action in the cells as estrogen and testosterone. Okay, one of the endocrine disruptors that we have is called BPA. Have you heard of that? On your water bottles it says BPA free. Why? Well, because this chemical looks like estrogen, and so when the body absorbs it, it has the same actions in the body as estrogen does. You know what else does that you touch every day? Those little heat receipts that you get at the store. They're full of BPA. Okay? If you don't have to touch them, don't. Wash your hands. Soap and water will take it off. But, we're seeing an increase in some endocrine disrupting illnesses like breast cancer, testicular cancer. Okay? We're seeing menses start a lot younger, and the question is, why are they starting so much younger? And there's a hypothesis that says it's due to these endocrine disruptors that are in our environment. So, yeah. Okay. Good times. Okay. There's some phenolics. There's that ring. Okay. But again, you don't have to memorize them, but it has that ring as a basis for all of the phenolics. Okay. So if I was taking notes on this and looking at the book, okay, I would add things that will help me remember what phenolics are, and including all the things that we talked about, and being an endocrine disruptor and what its shape is and biomagnification. But boy, it sure is really effective at killing microbes. Okay. All right, let's talk about chlorhexidine. Chlorhexidine we know is Hibiclens. It's a halogen. What's a halogen? We just talked about halogens. What are the two halogens we just talked about?
Chlorine and iodine.
Okay, chlorine and iodine. And where are they found?
On the 7th.
On the 7th column of the periodic table. Okay, so what did they do? To make chlorhexidine, they took a phenolic ring, the phenol ring, stuck a chlorine on it. Chlorhexidine. Ta-da! Okay. It's pretty efficient, okay? Okay, this is synthetic because we actually added the chlorine to it. It's synthetic, and it denatures protein, and it has broad biocidal properties, but it's not sporicidal, okay? And it has a fairly low toxicity. How many have used Hibiclens in your lifetime? Okay? if you're going in for surgery, oftentimes they either give you betadine or Hibiclens to wash with for a period of time before the surgery, okay? Because it's got a really low toxicity, okay? Do you want to use it all the time though? No. Why do you not want to use it all the time? Why don't you want to use it all the time? Because, yeah, it's going to get your good bacteria dead too, okay? There's a time and a place, right? There's a time and a place for it. If you're getting ready for a big surgery and they're going to cut you open, you probably want to keep your skin as clean as possible. But if you do it all the time, your normal microbiome is going to be gone. And it's there to help protect you. Remember, 98% of the bacteria are good for you, right? Part of your normal microbiome. So if you use this all the time thinking, oh, I'm going to be super clean, is that the healthiest choice? No, okay? So, yeah, so there's chlorhexidine. Any questions on chlorhexidine? Okay. Let's talk about alcohols. Yeah, let's talk about alcohols. Okay, back week 3, I asked you a question. You're like, I can't remember the weekend. How am I supposed to remember back to week 3? Okay, and I asked you a question about isopropyl alcohol. And what is a percentage of isopropyl alcohol that is the one that you like to use most? 70%. Yeah. Okay, 70% of ethyl alcohol or isopropyl, any of these alcohols. Why is it 70%?
Because it needs some water.
It needs some water, good. So what does this do? Okay, this is gonna help, disrupt the membrane, and then you've got 30% that's water, and that's gonna rush in and lyse the cell. Remember we talked about this? Okay, because I've seen it advertised, not correctly that, oh, well, if you've got 70%, 90 is better. Is that really true? No, because you need the alcohol to disrupt the membrane, but you need the water to run in and lyse the cell. And if you're at 90%, you only have 10% water. Is it going to be as efficient? Yeah, there's a reason why in lab you see 70%. Okay, that's a lab standard of 70% ethanol to clean things. Okay, all right. Now, back during COVID days, you couldn't get it. You had to buy 90%. You can dilute it. You know how to do math, so that's no problem. Okay, so usually you find solutions between 60 and 90, but where's the sweet spot? 70. Okay, and it dissolves lipids and can coagulate proteins of those vegetative cells and fungi. Okay, all right. Is it going to work against endospores? No. Is it going to work against cysts? No. Okay, so you see rubbing alcohol, it's not sporicidal. Okay, cool. All right. Any questions about alcohol? I read the microbiology stuff on Reddit because they have these clinical things that people put up to see different cells and stuff. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But somebody decided to put 70%, they decided to put Jack Daniels actually on a culture, and you can see, the culture's moving around, and all of a sudden it's like, and I see a lice. Yeah.
I saw a video online of this one guy who put whiskey on a chocolate loaf like and they just instantly got wiped out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to find some of that. We put them in the discussion because some of it is really good, and I love the immunology part because it has these different cells and it says, what is a cell? That, yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm such a geek, but yeah. So that's pretty cool. That, yeah, it'll work really fast. We had this in our household this weekend. Somebody said, "Oh no, I've got a fungus," and I'm like, "Oh shit, man, really? How did that happen?" Well, and so we're like, "Okay, how do we clean it up?" Okay, well, I thought if I poured alcohol on it, it would all go away. And I'm like, kid, natural selection, my friend. So, no, it doesn't work. In fact, in chapter 12, we're going to find out what really does work for dermatophytes. So anyway, yeah. Okay, online it said alcohol would kill the fungus. No, it's just going to really irritate your skin. Show me. Oh my gosh. Oh, don't show me again. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about oxidizing agents, hydrogen peroxide. Okay? This was one of those questions. Oh, yeah.
Question, like, if you use like higher concentration of alcohol, like, can it like scar your skin?
What do you mean by the scar? Like,
damage the skin where it's scarred?
usually not. The reason is that you have oils that will protect the skin. It's just going to hurt like crazy. I actually, and this is me speaking, not like as a licensed person, you know, or medic or anything like that. I actually love to use alcohol on wounds. Okay, it hurts really bad, but it's better, you know, than people slapping Neosporin on it. In my experience, in fact, we don't even do that we don't have Neosporin in our medic bag. We don't use it. Why? Because what is Neosporin made of? It's got two antimicrobials that already have a ton of resistance. And you put that goop on, and it blocks oxygen from getting in there. And what do we know about most of the microbes? They're anaerobic or facultative anaerobes, and so you want it. So I did this with a friend. We had a little contest of whose wounds would heal faster. Okay, I'm sorry, you're getting too much TMI today. But whose wounds would heal faster? And so my best friend, we cut her legs open moving some wood, and I was like, okay. And I just poured alcohol on it, and where it was really gaping, I just put in super glue. A little bit of duct tape. I healed 10 times faster than she did. Okay, why? Because she was like, oh, I gotta use Neosporin, and I gotta use these Band-Aids. Forget it. You know, put some dirt in it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so alcohol is really good. Will it scar? No. Is it going to be painful? Yes. What?
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, like duct taping super glue.
Are you not near a CVS or?
I'm a combat medic. I don't really care. Now, if it was my kid, oh, you know. Yeah.
You use surgical medical glue, right?
Huh?
Just a super glue. Like,
I super glue.
Like I can your finger.
Yeah. I just use super glue. The only time it becomes a problem is if you haven't stopped the bleeding, because then it will bubble up, right? But yeah, if I'm in the field and I'm just like out there, I don't really care. I know that, first of all, I've got a good immune system and it's going to heal up, and the alcohol does a lot. And then in a couple days, you know, if it's looking bad, then I'll go in and get it checked out. And I know my tetanus is up to date, so, right? But yeah, I just don't care. I just like put it in there and tape it up. All right, let's go. Yeah. Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah, it's scarred. Yeah, it's totally scarred. I don't care. Nobody cares about my legs. I'm not gorgeous 25 and, you know, I've got old lady legs. Who cares? All right. Yeah. Okay, now this is one of the things that was missed on the exam, was a question about superoxide dismutase and catalase. Oh my gosh, remember that slide that had the two equations on it for aerobes that had superoxide dismutase that could take oxygen? And what does superoxide dismutase make at the end of the reaction? Hydrogen peroxide, and then the hydrogen peroxide is metabolized by an enzyme called what? Catalase. Yeah. Yep, just whoop, right all the way through. Okay? Folks got one part, but not the other part. So, and this is a true-false question, and I shed a little tear. But that's okay. There's redemption. Okay? So let's look at hydrogen peroxide. Okay, weak hydrogen peroxide, which you can get in the store, is about at CVS. I've been there before. May not sound like it, but I've been there. Hydrogen peroxide is kind of weak, 3%. Now, you can have industrial strength, which is 35%. We also use that to make bombs, by the way. So yeah, it's hard to get because of that, because people have made bombs with it. Yeah.
I learned that in Mexico.
Did you really?
Yeah, they put aluminum and then they put like a bottle and then they fold it in half, and once they like unfold it, it'll mix in and it'll explode like.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hydrogen peroxide. Yeah, it's yeah, those high concentrations. All right. So you went to the Mexican bomb school?
I was a kid when I learned that.
Yeah, it is hard to get 35%. You have to have a license, and you have to be in an organization that can use this at a strong concentration. Yeah, it's really unstable. Okay, at high concentrations. So it's an oxidizing agent. So remember this back from chemistry? Yeah, what does this mean? Losing electrons or hydrogens. Hydrogen is gaining. Okay, so this is an oxidizing agent. So what does it do? It reduces. Okay, so, all right. So free radicals, and they damage protein and DNA. That's what free radicals do. They decompose to oxygen gas, and they're toxic to anaerobes. And the solutions are sporicidal. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Let's talk about the detergents. And we talked last time about how detergents have a polar and a non-polar part. Okay. And when you add water to them, they get bubbly. Okay. They make bubbles. So these are soaps, which mechanically remove dirt. Okay, and what else does soap target? Targets what? Membranes. Good. Okay. So we have quats, which are quaternary ammonium compounds, and they are surfactants, and they target the membranes. They affect the membrane permeability. Okay. They're not sporicidal. They smell nice, like Bactine smells nice. Benzoalconium chloride. Okay, is what the hospitals use. And these are part of artificial tears and antiseptics. Okay, there's Bactine. Okay, so, okay. So when you go get your hair cut, what are they supposed to put their combs and stuff in? Barbicide, which is a quat. Okay, and you're supposed to, it's sensitive to organics, so you're supposed to change it out every so often, right? You can't just have the same thing for 6 months. It won't be effective. It'll still be blue, but it won't be effective. Okay, so you can take a look at some of the differences between non-germicidal soap and germicidal soap. Okay, yeah, just so you know some of those soapy things. All right, let's talk about heavy metals. Like Metallica. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Okay. One of the things that you might have learned when you were a little kid, if you had a fish tank, is you could drop a penny in it, and it would help keep the microbes under control. Did anybody do that? You did it right. All right. So you were a microbiologist from a very young age.
No, a friend told me to do that.
Oh yeah? Yeah, because of heavy metal toxicity, right? Okay. So, what do people use? A lot of people, well, some people use like silver, okay? I even have heard of people using mercury, which is really toxic, and it's a neurotoxin toxin that biomagnifies. And once you get mercury in your system, you can't get it in unless you get treated with something called EDTA, which is a chelator, okay? And it kills,
treatment,
huh?
right? Just treatment, it doesn't kill it.
Mercury? It can kill microbes, but worse than that, for you, it disturbs the myelin sheath. Okay, it gets in there, and the myelin sheath is used to insulate all these nerves. If you've got a mercury toxicity, those myelin sheaths start to disappear. Yeah, and once they do, they don't come back.
Is mercury sporicidal?
What?
Is mercury sporicidal?
Is mercury sporicidal? No. Why?
I don't know.
You're just hoping?
If it's that toxic, I was thinking maybe.
Yeah, but where is it going to do it? It's going to be more, it's going to inhibit enzymes, and it's going to inhibit lipids. And a spore doesn't have a lot of either one of those that are active. So yeah, so yeah, these work at really low concentrations. I get nervous when people start saying, "Oh well, I'm using silver to help clear my infection." They get it? They order it online. You can get anything online. Or some of these health food places will cover it. They'll have elemental silver and that, which is really expensive, but yeah, it's in a tincture usually, and they just drop it in. And it might do great for their mouth, but that's not going to do anything systemically. There's one thing to remember that this book doesn't talk about. Okay? The dose makes the poison. Okay? That's every toxicologist's mantra. Okay? If you get something in high enough concentrations, it can kill you. Can salt kill you? Oh yeah. Can water kill you? Sure. Okay? Everything can kill you. So it's the dose that matters, right? So 2 liters of water a day, is that going to kill you? Not unless you've got some kind of, problems with your kidney or retaining water. That probably won't be a deal. But, if you took it to, I think it's 1.2 kilograms per kilogram of salt, you're going to be very well preserved, but it'll kill you. Okay? So, we use some of these heavy metals to preserve, use and preserve for medications. Okay? All right? One of the things that got the autism thing going back with Andrew Wakefield, and started this thing where I'm not gonna use vaccines because they've got thimerosal in them. What is thimerosal? It's a tiny amount of mercury, and they stopped putting it in 2001. Okay? Now we've already talked about Andrew Wakefield in this class, but are vaccines causing autism? Absolutely not. Okay? What is causing autism?
Genetic.
Some of it is genetic, and if you need some verification of this, you can go to this great website called OMIM, Online Mendelian Inheritance in Man. Yeah, have you heard about this website? OMIM is, okay. So you can put in anything, and it will come up with, it's got 940 genetic entries for autism. Okay? And it gives you where on the chromosome it is. So this is chromosome 2 on the Q arm, the P arm is the top arm, the Q arm is the bottom arm. And you can see and go through. And then if you want the original, the primary literature, you can go and find the primary literature, and then you can click on that and read about it. Okay? So, yeah. I mean, there's so much out there to debunk this thing that, something, we're going to give a vaccine that will cause autism. Now, do vaccines cause problems? Sure they do. Okay? I've had reactions to vaccines. I'm sure most everybody has reactions to vaccines. And what is the point of vaccines? Is it to keep you from getting sick at all? For most of them, no. It's to reduce the severe effects. That's really what most of them do. There are a few that work really well, like tetanus, okay, that it prevents you from getting it. But if we look at a lot of the viral stuff that's out, man, yeah. So did you know about this database?
No.
Yeah, write this one down. This is a great one to have in clinic. It's OMIM. You can put in anything. So like, I was like, all right, are my allergies genetic? Well, they have 353 entries that talk about IgE responsiveness, okay, we'll learn about that, IgE hypersensitive syndrome, asthma, okay, but look at how many genes are related to that. So, I mean, it really gives you a nice perspective of what's going on there. Okay, so, all right, let's talk about aldehydes. There are two aldehydes on here that are pretty common, glutaraldehyde and formaldehyde. If you went through Bio 1 here and you saw things in jars, do you remember that Bio 1 lab when you saw things in jars? Okay, we used to store everything in formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is super, super toxic, okay? It kills everything. Okay, question? Good? Okay, so yeah, it kills everything. We moved to glutaraldehyde because it's a little less toxic, okay? So yeah, we use this, like Sidex is used as a sterilant for heat-sensitive instruments. So if you can't autoclave them, we can use Sidex. And formaldehyde, okay, is a disinfectant and it's toxic. And it's also listed in the California State List of Carcinogens. Another reason we switched to glutaraldehyde, okay? This is a sterilant. So is it going to kill endospores? Yeah.
I thought formaldehyde doesn't kill endospores, but glutaraldehyde does.
It depends on the concentration. Okay, it really depends on the concentration. But yeah, so when you embalm, what do you use? What is used? Formaldehyde. Yeah, because we're not too worried about toxicity at that point. So just to the funeral workers. Okay. Now, how does this work? It cross-links proteins. Okay. So here's the it does alkylation. So here it is. Okay, makes a nice little ring there, and once it makes a whole series of rings and polymerizes, you can you can cross-link the proteins and link them together. If you've got a bunch of proteins that are used to acting independently and now they're cross-linked, they can't work. So that's how it works. Okay, any questions on that? Good? Okay. All right, so here's some common formaldehydes. Okay. Yeah. If you look at fluorine, most of them are going to give off what we call volatile organic compounds, and that includes formaldehyde. Okay, so if you get a new fluorine, whether it's vinyl or whatever, even carpet, will give off volatile organic compounds, including formaldehyde. So that's why if you know any firefighters, being a firefighter in the state of California is considered a carcinogen. It's not a carcinogen per se, but it's a cancer-causing occupation. Okay, why? Because if you look at everything that you've got in your house, and then when it burns, it combusts, you've got all these VOCs that are coming off, including formaldehyde. Okay, and they use it to prevent microbes from growing, but because it's cheap. It's really cheap, but it's very toxic. So yeah, so when you get a new place or you get new furniture and stuff and you smell that smell coming off, some of it's going to be formaldehyde. So how do you lower your exposure? How do you lower your exposure? Don't buy it. Don't buy a house. Don't live in a cave. Live in a cave. It has bats. Uh-oh, now we got a problem. Okay, no.
Respiratory mask or something?
Oh, simple. Just open the windows for a while until it degasses. Yeah.
Spend no money.
Yeah, spend no money. There we go. Yeah.
Don't burn your house down.
What?
Don't burn your
Yeah, don't burn your house down. Yeah, that's not recommended. That's even a better idea. Don't burn it down. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about toxic gases and aerosols. Yay! Okay. It's 2 to 6 hours in a gas chamber, and one of the chemicals that is used is ethylene oxide. And ethylene oxide, these are strong alkylating agents, okay? These are sterilants, and they use it to sterilize bedding and materials and disposables, okay? But it's very toxic, okay? Very toxic, and it's carcinogenic. They used to use ethylene bromide. They used to use that in the fields to keep strawberries healthy. They can't use that anymore. So a lot of these pretty toxic. Okay, so there's the little gas chamber. Okay. Now let's talk about food. Food has been in the news a lot lately. What was outlawed last week? Red dyes. Yeah, all that good stuff. Okay, I want to bring you back here to the dose makes the poison. Okay, the dose makes the poison. So, yeah, you may say, oh, I'm not going to have red dye, but I'm going to go have barbecue meat. Okay, different, choose your poison. Okay. So these are chemical food preservatives. They're usually organic acids, and they want to inhibit microbial growth, like sulfites, benzoates, sorbates, propionates, and nitrates. Okay, all right, and they're in our food if they're going to have a high shelf life. That's why they were used, is to help preserve food, right? However, if you're drinking 2 gallons of Kool-Aid Punch with red dye number 40 in there a day, that might be an issue for you. Yeah, you have very interesting poop, I'm sure. Okay, but yeah, so we use a lot of this. It's kind of like you got to think about. I mean, I'm not big on a lot of these preservatives, okay? Nitrates and nitrites, we know that increases the risk of colon cancer, rectum cancer, okay? We know it can contribute to esophageal cancer. We know that some of these sulfites, if you're asthmatic, okay, your airways tend to be very reactionary to sulfites in there, okay? MSG, that's a sulfite used, okay, for flavoring. It also helps preserve, okay? But, it's kind of a trade-off. Do you want your food to spoil, or do you want to do that? So, use food that has something to preserve it, okay? So it's up to you. Now, I put some of these in here to help you remember, some of these agents, okay? So there we go. All right, okay. So, and one of the things I wanted to tell you, oh yeah, see how these E numbers, okay? You might say, well, Europe doesn't have these chemicals. Yes, they do. They just give them a name, a number, and a letter, okay? They don't put their whole name on their food, but they have the numbers and the letters, okay? And so, yeah, they tend to use less anyway, but don't, if you're traveling and you decide to go to Europe and say, well, they don't have any preservatives. No, they just gave them another name. Sneaky. Okay. All right. Is that cool? Okay. So let's talk about for a minute here, how do we study for all of this stuff? This is a lot of detailed stuff. How are you going to study for it? Quick. What did you say? Quickly. Okay. Quickly.
Making a table.
What?
Making a table.
Okay.
Like,
You might
there's a
just.
way to put your stuff.
You're going to put a table with all the stuff on? Cool. Yeah. A mind map. Okay. Good. All right. I would try and also play a group game, okay, where you put all of them on a card and then ask your study buddies, okay, which ones are sporicidal? Which ones are bacteriostatic? Which ones are bactericidal? Okay, so you can play with this because that's what's going to get you the application knowledge to do well on the exam when you have to apply all this. Okay, so we talked about things. I tried to give you hints to think about things for the different chemicals, but the more that you can practice, which ones are this, which are that, which ones damage membranes, which ones damage DNA, which ones do both. Okay, that will help get you remembering what each of these does. Is that cool? Okay, yeah, just a little help there. Yeah, so, okay. Let's take a look at this next chapter, which is chapter 12. I love this chapter. You're gonna think I just love everything about micro. Okay. Okay. All right. This chapter you're going to use a lot in your. I was looking up NCLEX questions, and you're going to use this one a lot because this is the drug section. Okay, use a lot of drugs. So, chemotherapy. What do? You control the microbes inside the host or on the host. Okay. All right, let's talk about antibiotics. Antibiotics are drugs that are produced by what? Microbes, okay. A synthetic is a man-made or person-made drug is synthesized in the lab. What is a semi-synthetic? And micro-made, yep, so you're a little both, okay. What is second and third generation antibiotics? Okay, that's right. They're modified to increase efficacy, reduce toxicity, and overcome resistance. Okay, prophylaxis. We talked about this last time. What is prophylaxis? Preventive treatment. Okay, all right. Now, how is it different from a vaccine? What does a vaccine do?
Decreases the effects.
Okay, so when you give a drug, you're giving a drug, you're metabolizing it, it's doing its job. When you give a vaccine, you're using the immune system. Okay, that's different than a medication. Okay, you're using an immune system to build up antibodies and B memory cells and T memory cells. Okay, so that is what makes it different than a vaccine. Okay, superinfection. What is a superinfection? This is a microbe that's resistant to chemotherapy and is totally outgrows other microbes. Why and how? Usually because it has gotten some kind of drug-resistant genes. And we talked about the ways that bacteria can get genes. What are the 3 ways it can get genes? Conjugation, transformation, and transduction. Good. Yeah, good. Okay, so these are antibiotics. They're common products of aerobic bacteria. I just put these on here because these are going to be the common genuses that produce antimicrobial drugs. Molds are Penicillium encephalosporum and Streptomyces and Bacillus. Okay, here's more tables. I love tables. Why? Because it's easy to help group things together. Okay, so we've got the producer, and then the type of microbe, and then what drugs do we get from them. Do I expect that you know this table? No. But when we start talking about polymyxin Bs, you can have in your notes, oh yeah, that comes from a bacillus, that comes from another bacteria. Okay, so let's talk about drug toxicity. Okay, we have what's called a therapeutic index, and that's the dose of the drug that's toxic to the host compared to the minimum dose that is toxic to the microbe. Okay, so, okay, so what we'd like, okay, is something in here. So this is toxic to microbe, and this is toxic to host. We want this in here. This is called the therapeutic index. Okay, and we'd like this as wide as possible. What's really dangerous for the host is when we have therapeutic indexes that are like this. What does that tell you? The amount that you need to kill the bacteria is very close in toxicity to the host. Is this something you want to prescribe widely? No, you'd like a nice little big gap there, okay? So this is why we care about toxicities and therapeutic indexes, okay? All right. So if a drug is toxic at 10 milligrams and toxic to the pathogen at 10 milligrams, okay, its therapeutic index, is it more like this one or more like this one? It's more like this one, right? Okay, you want that to be as far apart as possible. Okay, if it's toxic to humans at 100 and toxic to the pathogen at 10, okay, more like this one, right? Okay, I didn't label the axes, but you kind of get the idea of what's going on. I just wanted to have you have a picture rather than numbers in your head. Okay, all right. Drug X has a chemotherapeutic index or a therapeutic index of 8. One has one of 2.5. Which one would you use? I'd use X for sure. Okay, cool. All right. Now, one thing, I'm going to take a sidebar here and talk about drug toxicity. Everybody is different. Everybody has different therapeutic indexes, okay? In your liver right now, you've got a whole bunch of these enzymes called cytochrome P450s, okay? That's the abbreviation for them. Everybody's levels of different cytochrome P450s, and we have things like 1A1, 2A2, 2A3, 2A6, 2A B, C, we have cytochrome P450D. We've got all these different enzymes, okay? And every one of you have got different levels of those enzymes in your liver. If you're a meat eater, you're going to have more of certain types. If you drink alcohol on a regular basis, you're going to have other ones that are higher and lower, okay? If you've had a certain treatment with a medication in the last 6 months, that will cause some of them to go high and some of them to get low, to decrease, okay? Why is Tylenol given a max of 2 to 3 milligrams or 2 or 3 grams a day? Because it burns out these, okay? That's why, is it burns out your cytochromes. And once you get the cytochromes that aren't working anymore, you've exhausted them, then the drug gets toxic levels in your blood, okay? So you have one patient that reacts great to this medication with this therapeutic index, and you've got one that doesn't. There are differences in ethnicities, okay? Eskimos and Navajos are harder to put under. They don't respond the same way because of their cytochrome P450s when they're going in for surgery. It's a little different. So I just want to get that idea in your head that, you know, everybody's different. Medicine is an art. I mean, we use a lot of science, but it really is an art. You have to look at the whole patient and see what's going on, okay? And especially for toxicities, okay? Is that cool? All right, so let's talk about the history of chemotherapy, okay? Ehrlich designed a synthetic arsenic drug. What was it called? Salvarsan, yes, to treat what? Syphilis. And then along came Alexander Fleming, who discovered lysosome in tears and in saliva and sweat. And it was the first discovery that, hey, some of the things that we produce have antimicrobial properties too, okay, or chemotherapeutic properties, okay? And we have the sulfonamides, they're still here, okay? All right, so back in 1928, Alexander Fleming was actually a mess in his lab, got a fungal contamination, and discovered what? Penicillin. Good. Okay, and then we had Florey, let's see, who else? Florey and Chain, who did penicillin, and then that was mass produced and changed World War II, because it used to be, if you got shot with a bullet, you just amputated because of the infection you would get, okay? And Waxman did soils. He found the streptomycin, okay? Discovered streptomycin in the microbes that are in the soil. So, yeah, so we really have done, okay, this is kind of the golden age, and if you notice, we haven't had a whole lot of new antimicrobial drugs on the market. I think there's been 3 in the last 6 years. Okay, why? Because they're only going to treat really drug-resistant infections, and they're too expensive to mass produce. So we don't have that, and that's going to be the trend. Okay, so let's look at how we evaluate antimicrobials. We do what's called the phenol coefficient test. We do the MIC concentration, which is minimum inhibitory concentration, and minimum bactericidal concentration, and then we do a disc diffusion test. Okay? We do these straight away in the lab as soon as we get something that we think might have antimicrobial properties. Okay? So let's talk about the phenol coefficient test. It is a dilution test, and we use Salmonella typhi, Staphylococcus aureus, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And what we do is we take these cultures in broth, and they're exposed to different dilutions, and then we look at them for a period of time. And we look at what is the lowest effective dose, compared that with phenol, which is another name, carbolic acid. If the phenol coefficient is greater than 1, it is more effective than phenol. If the phenol concentration coefficient is less than 1, the chemical is not as effective, okay, less effective, okay? So that is the phenol coefficient test. You compare it all to phenol, okay? The MIC test is another dilution test, and you test several bacteria. And you use, again, broth cultures. You look something like this, okay? Nice pretty colors. All right, and we test the chemical for a period of time, and we look at the greatest dilution that will, with no inhibition, is the minimum inhibitory concentration. So we're not looking at what is going to kill everything. We look at what is the least amount of chemical that we need in order to kill microbes. Okay, so it's the lowest, we take that lowest dose, and then we subculture it onto medium with no chemicals and see if it actually does do what it is predicted to do in the MIC test. Okay, now, how does this work? We've got some pictures of how it works. Okay, so the maximum dilution that will, MIC is the lowest concentration, or the maximum dilution that will inhibit an organism, okay? And so if we look at here, no growth, no growth, no growth, and then suddenly we get growth, we go back 1 dilution, okay? Go back 1 dilution, and we start looking at this and saying, okay, how can we inoculate these in antimicrobial-free media, give a little bit of this concentration, and then we find the lowest maximum concentration that it will grow in. So we can get the MIC and the MBC all at once. Okay. So, yeah, we're not on this side of the spectrum and we're looking at, oh my gosh, you know, how much does it take to kill? But so we know these are really powerful, so we're not going to worry about those too much, but we're going to see, hey, we know the MIC where the lowest concentration will inhibit growth. What's the maximum? Okay. So anyway, so we can look at it in culture tubes. You can see there are different concentrations on here. Okay, and this is all automated now. I mean, we used to do this by hand, but it's all automated. Okay, what is this one? This is the Kirby-Bauer test, the disc diffusion test. Okay, how do we do this? We take a bacterium that we're interested in. So oftentimes we use E. coli for gram-negative. Okay, that's a good one to use. So we test sensitivity for gram-negatives. We might use another strain to be for gram-positive, but you put it on a petri dish and you get a nice lawn that's grown here. And then you get these little discs. And these discs are going to be soaked in different kinds of material. It might be a quat. It might be, chloramphenicol. It might be, penicillin or whatever. But they soak the discs in, and then they place the discs on that lawn. Okay? And wherever you see clear, that's where the microbes died off. So, like, which one do you think is the most effective killer of what would I look at?
The top right.
Yeah, this top right thing. I'd like to know what that is, and I'd like to know what that is, because it sure wiped out a lot. Okay, this one I'm not too interested in. It doesn't have a big zone of inhibition. Remember the zone of inhibition where nothing grows? Okay, so yeah, and then we take a look at it, and this is so this has a lot of sensitive microbes, or sensitive. So if this was an E. coli plate, I would know that E. coli was sensitive to this and resistant to this, and maybe that, but definitely that. Okay. All right. How are we doing? Ooh, we gotta stop. This is so much fun though, all these tests. Okay, so next time in class, get your card test, 80 seconds, okay? Not a minute and a half, but 80 seconds.